impeccable, an impeccable speaker. But before we do that, I'd like us to open with a word of prayer. Esther, if I can call upon you to kindly open for us with a word of prayer. Esther, if you can hear me, kindly open for us with a word of prayer. Okay, it seems like Esther is in a position, she's not in a position to talk. So I will do that. Let us just commit this session to God in prayer. Father, we thank you for this time that we are gathered on this platform to share nuggets of knowledge and wisdom. Give us ears that hear, eyes that see, and hearts that are open to learning, so that, Father, we may be beneficiaries of what you have in store for us this evening. We thank you, we honor you, and we glorify you. In Jesus' name we pray, and we say aloud, amen, amen. So what do we have for you in store this evening? My name is Jerry Ndongo. I will be your moderator for the evening, but the floor is not mine really to own. Today we have a very interesting topic. But before we start off that topic, I just want to take you through those who are responsible for having this series of weekly webinars. So this HR webinar series are purposed for HR professionals to provide purpose in what it is that they are doing, to be able to articulate their role of purpose in achieving transformation, so that people are able to deliver what they want to do, and they have planned, they are aligned with what they have to do when in the places that they are working. Our partner brands that are helping us put this ship onto the seas is Inquest Research and Consulting. These are your transformation and impact partners. Inquest is responsible for a lot of things that are happening in the space of data, in the space of HR. And indeed, these are people that you need to align yourself with if you are on that path of growth and the trajectory of getting to where you want to be, where God ordained you to be. We have MyVarsity. It is an online learning platform that helps you increase your skills, your knowledge, so that you can get to the next level to help you achieve your purpose in life. We also have another organization that is Purpose Bus. And I'm sure for those of you who are on LinkedIn, you see Gabriel Nyamu every day dropping you nuggets on the Purpose Bus. And I just spilled the beans on who our speaker is. Our speaker today is an amazing gentleman. I have known him for over the last 10 years. Gabriel Nyamu, a husband to one and a father of three. But he has something that he does that makes our lives worth being, because he helps us transform and find our purpose, so that the generation that we are in is able to impact generations to come. He's a seasoned corporate executive and a purpose coach with a vast experience in purpose-led transformation for organizations. And how he does this is helping you have a mindset transformation. And he believes that every human has a unique and redemptive purpose for impacting people and the planet. So wherever you are, there is something that is just specific to you, and something that only you can drive for success. Without further ado, allow me to welcome our speaker for the evening, Gabriel Nyamu, to take us through the interesting topic of Agile HR. Gabriel Nyamu, good evening.
Good evening, Jerry. Pleasure having me and pleasure having you too. And good evening, team, for those who are in Kenya. If there's anybody out of Kenya, it could be you good morning or good day or good night. I don't know. But pleasure to be here. Thank you, Jerry, for such an amazing introduction. And my fellow colleague, HR team. Currently, I like calling all of us, especially those that are in HR, as impact partners. I think that's because we are all engaged for impact, we not for survival, and therefore I'm very keen on relating to us as impact partners because there's something that we are pursuing and impact the planet with. So thank you, Jerry, for the intro. I think because we had already committed to fix into our time, I know the people who are saying they're already on their way traveling back home. Maybe they are going to join us along the way, but I think we just have to proceed. So as Jerry have said, my name is Gabriel Nyamo, and I lead a company called Inquest Research and Consulting, and I do a lot of purpose coaching, and I'm sure many of us, we may have engaged in quite different spaces in the marketplace. I'm also a HR colleague, was in HR for around 13 years in the mainstream practice. But later I moved in strategy and transformation where I do consultancy for the last 8 years. It's quite my pleasure, and I'll just give a quick background why this topic is very relevant to me around the Agile, and I'm sure I'm speaking to people who have already had it. It's a common word out there, so I don't know what new I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to give my own version and my own connection with the Agile way. I think the first time I heard about Agile was 2017. And I had visited, I was doing some consultancy in another country out of Kenya. So when I went there, as a strategy expert, I remember I found that organization was purely on Agile, 100%. So when I went there and I started talking and introduced myself, and I would tell people, introduce yourself and your department. Then the shock on me was they told me we don't have departments. So we have chapters, we have squads. Then after every 2 hours, these guys, and we were in a workshop in terms of consultancy, they will do some things, of course, where they will start up and they will kind of give an update on some of the things that they were doing. And I find quite interesting. I'm quite confused because in 2017, I had not really heard about the Agile way. It was the time it was forming up. And in Kenya, of course, I had not really heard that much. So, and I got confused because they kind of deconstructed what I had in mind in terms of I should not call department, I should call them chapters and squads and teams. Those startup meetings were more to just do a catch up of where they are in terms of the deliverables and the milestone that they were pursuing. And I can assure you, as a consultant who I thought I was an expert, I was quite humbled. And I had to start learning exactly what is this methodology, exactly what does it mean. And what I love about Agile, and that's the reason why I am an advocate for Agile way, is on two things. One, it focuses on mindset. It's a whole mindset. There are people who talk about the manifesto, the framework, but it's actually more anchored on mindset. Now, when you talk about mindset, you touch my life because that's what I do mostly on a daily basis, transforming mindset. The other thing, of course, is because it's more human-centered, meaning it's a methodology, of course, it's more geared towards you're producing something for who? And does it speak to the context of the need of the user or the customer that you're dealing with? And I think those make me kind of love the Agile methodology because it speaks to things that actually has been a gap in the market. And I'll tell you some of the stories and my interaction in some of the things in the market, especially in my working career, which I strongly feel was because of a lack of Agile practices in the market. So I think I'm just going to run through some few concepts. So this is a starter conversation, and therefore I don't expect that we are going to really go into the depth, but we are going to see whether this month we can do more exposition around the Agile. One of the things I've seen in the market, there's so many buzzwords, but when you go to the ground, you find things are completely different. So people talk about concept, but sometimes the application is quite very, very layered. And I think that's the position that I would like us to change our mindset as we go through this webinar and also in subsequent build-up. So today we might not be able to go into the very granular bite-sized level, but I'm hoping at least we can be able to build up these today. So I will approach these from beginners. Beginners mean people probably have not necessarily used Agile way, because I know there are those that I know organizations that have already gone into Agile. But what is the role of HR now, and how do we model this as HR practitioners? Because at the end of the day, it has to boil into the mindset and culture. So HR, of course, has a big role to play in that context, because we are the people who are modeling that culture for our organization. So I will not introduce myself. I think Jerry has already done much more justice to my introduction. So I'll talk about, what is Agile, where does Agile come from, what are the Agile, the benefits of it, and then what are the core components, how other HR organizations using Agile, and what are the key success and challenges with Agile itself, and how can I use Agile techniques in my day-to-day work. So it looks complex. This should be a one-day workshop, so you bear with me, because then we might not go to a lot of finer details around this. So I want to start somewhere. This is my personal experience. I worked in the bank for almost 10 years. And I remember one time there's a branch we opened somewhere out of the country, sorry, not out of the town. That means out of Nairobi, in of the villages out there. And I remember when we opened the branches, we installed very expensive ATMs. But those ATMs, we always felt they were not adding value. Why? The branch manager kept on calling HR. He wanted more tellers. He could call and say, Gabriel, I want more tellers. Then I will ask, why would you need tellers? And the branch is quite new. I mean, we can't see much transactions there that didn't warrant more tellers. And there's also an ATM, which was very expensive that time, even to install one ATM. And what was happening is that in that places, people will still go to queue to either deposit or withdraw 500, 1,000 shillings. That time there was little mobile money. So it's more of ATM, and you go to the brick and mortar banking. And there's an ATM out there that is idle. Nobody on the ATM. If you withdraw 1K, people are going to the banking hall. Now, it was quite an interesting phenomenon, because we thought the ATM will solve the issue of the queue in the banking hall. But I think we had bypassed and made assumptions that were really not accurate, because that was just our assumptions. And like any other business, that's what we do. We make very generic assumptions that a customer will require something, but yet they don't need it. So we thought the 500 they are depositing or they are withdrawing, they can do it on the ATM. But for them, they never trusted the ATM. Now, actually, very interesting, which is something humorous. I always give that, is actually when we came later to analyze, we discovered it was a trust issue from the community. The community did not trust Pesa ya Ukuta. I know for those who understand that in like Swahili, but we have anybody out of the country, then you understand that Pesa ya Ukuta, money from the wall. They were not trusting the money from the wall. How do I put a card and I tell ATM 2,000, it give me 2,000? You see people even every day, they have to withdraw and then count back. And I'm sure I'm speaking to some of us here. You withdraw and you count again. Why? You don't trust the ATM. Question is, was the ATM human-centered in terms of the design? Now, what we did as a mistake there, we misunderstood, or we kind of made an assumption that the community there actually needed an ATM, and they were willing and ready to it. We didn't do a lot of work in terms of sensitizing people on the use of the ATM. And you and me can tell, when banks started this mobile money, we all struggled a little bit in the beginning. I remember going to Equity Bank, and I was transacting there. They had these tablets, which they still have today. So when I went there and I was queuing actually to do a transaction, the security guy, the security man, came and told me, what do you want to do? I told him what I want to do. He said, you can actually do this on this tablet. I felt so demeaned. Why? These are security guards speaking actually to a former banker, speaking actually to somebody who I can actually say, yes, I'm a bit very conversant with the current technologies, a data scientist. So, but this is a security man telling me what to do. I felt like, And I never went to that branch again, not branch, but any branch, unless when I'm doing a serious transaction. Now, these are some of the things we need to start thinking around. Now, to take it home, we did a research in one of the organizations, and we analyzed the benefits. All of us in our HR, in our companies, we have what we call benefits. We went to a company that had over 17 benefit packages. All those things, medical covers, loans, there are like 10 of them. Okay, you have like 10 personal loans, development loans, all those kind of things. So many different packages, covers, in terms of medical, in terms of pension and all that. But especially on the loans, it was quite interesting. We found that there are loans that people are not taking. So question is, why call it a benefit if at all nobody is benefiting from it? And I want you to ask that question. Look at the uptake of the benefit in terms of the things that you have given. You might discover there are some that only has 10% utilization. The question for you is that really human-centered? What is it really made for human? Because if it is to address a need and that need is real, automatically there should be people enjoying that benefit. But I can assure you there are benefits that we have in our policies, in our manuals, that are just there to appeal, but sometimes they are actually not human-centered. They were appropriate legacy propositions that we've made, and we still assume people love them. We are in different generations. Generations have different needs. So if we really don't understand the kind of people that are working with us in terms of the generations, we might be trying to enforce them on some working environment, on some policies, structures, which actually do not speak to them. Sorry for the camera measure. So the conversation really in this is kind of to draw our attention in terms of how we need to change our mindset when it comes to even how we develop our policies, our frameworks. I usually say, I think there's a time it will reach where we will not have those HR manual. And the only statement that will be on the HR manual, it say, we will personalize experience and engagement based on context. I'm very radical in terms of change. I look at one point where that will be the case, where I don't have to quote, I only need to say we'll contextualize situations based on the context and the needs of who we are dealing with, because generally that is it. And I'm sure for those who are doing recruitment, you are facing this challenge. When we do recruitment, I was hiring some few tech people, and it was quite a challenge because they're asking you hard questions. Why must I adhere to whatever you're saying? I have to work this and this time. Why must I adhere to this kind of engagement? Why must I adhere to 45 working hours? Why should not I work 20 hours? Pay me for what is worth. I want to have more time to do other things. I mean, we are being pushed to really look at things in a completely different way. So the example I gave here was one example, but now relating to the customer. We were not agile to the customer in terms of the ATM. We thought on our side. And I always make this joke and say, most of us, especially management, there are two things we always throw to a problem or to a challenge. Either we throw a body means a human being, hiring, you hire a new person, or you throw technology. And we think the technology will solve the issue. Or we think an additional human body, you throw a body, will solve an issue. But I've come and I've lived long enough to see, actually that is not. You just need, first of all, to understand the kind of people that you're solving the problem for. So that's just a quick background in terms of some of the things that I have personally experienced in the Agile way, and why I really I'm an advocate for Agile, because I think for me, I see a much more value, as much as it's a huge paradigm shift from what you've been doing before. One of the things it addresses, of course, is it helps us drive empowerment to the user or to the customer that you're targeting. Is personalized. It helps us actually be able to be real time in terms of our response and our service, whether it's like for customers, and also give us differentiation. The way you treat me should be different from the way you treat Jerry. I hope I'm speaking and I'm engaging. Kindly give me a Y on the chat. I want to make sure that I'm not speaking to myself alone. These virtual platforms, we need to make sure at least we are all attuned to. Okay, give me a Y on the chat. Thank you so much. Thank you for the comment I'm seeing. Kindly, if you have a question, you can always put it on the chat. We are going to address them along the way as we continue. So this is just a background. And what does HR do? Now, you may notice I'm emphasizing on one thing, designing. That design is the key word, the design. What do we design? These are not new to us. And for who do we design what we design? I know we design work. We create work. We do those job descriptions. We determine the work schedules and all that. We actually design the workplace itself. And we design the worker because we determine how we model our employees in terms of capability, the competencies, and all that. And that's why we say now we need to be a bit more human-centered in this design. We also designing the culture in which we operate, which is very critical. That's the software of the organization. Competencies for our people, leadership pipeline, policies, processes, value propositions, especially the employee value proposition. We design benefits for our people and many other things that we do out there. But then who are we designing it for and for what? Of course, it's to be able to have value and impact. That means it should be purposeful, it should have a meaning. So when you're designing a policy, it is not just a policy. It should be a policy that is for a purpose and, of course, for a meaning. But, of course, the key emphasis is that that design should be human-centered. It should not just be to fulfill a process, to fulfill a policy. And you quote a manual. Sometimes I see people quoting a policy, but if you ask them, what is the spirit behind the policy, they can't tell you. I remember talking to one recruiter and they were saying, no, we only hire people who have scored B and above. I mean, B for high school. That high school, you score B and above. And I asked, okay, so tell me why. Why a B? Show me why a B will give you more value than a C. And show me why a C plus will not give you value. And the person could not defend that. And that's a problem we have. So somebody will just tell you the policy says that we can only hire a B. So somebody religiously then apply that because that's what the policy says. That's what we mostly find ourselves doing, and especially in our day-to-day where we are more policy-oriented. But we should focus again on the wider community impact. Now, here I want to throw a spanner in the works. This conversation that we are going to dissect later, especially in the purpose-led group, HR group, I want us to have more serious conversations this year. When we still keep on hearing words like 87% of people are disengaged, question is, who is taking responsibility for this? Who is really owning this? Because when we hear things like mental health issues out there, one out of every 4, in fact, it could be maybe a half, maybe the number could be high in January. Who is taking this responsibility? And what do we do and what's our role as HR? Because we actually incubate and nurture community situations, because these people, if they are kind of disengaged at work or they are unhappy, they are the same people doing injustice out there. There are some of the people we have hired are the future politicians. So if you don't model the right, environment for work and culture, we are actually participating. And that's why HR now is being looked at HR for impact. That it means the things that we do even within organizations, we are actually participating in the wider community impact. Because these people, they are the people going to churches, they are the people voting when it comes to general elections, they are the people cutting trees in the villages there, they are our employees. So you have to go beyond just, dealing with the job description and look at the community impact. And that's why HR and sustainability are joined at the hip. So those are the things that we do, of course. And so the Agile itself just brings the aspect of collaboration in the work, which then, of course, help us iterate and kind of do experimental work. We are going to have another webinar somewhere, maybe later in the course of the month, something around designing workplace experiments, how design business experiments. Because in the Agile method, you have to keep on doing some experiments so that you understand the needs of the employee and also on the customer. I'll use the word customer here because even the employee is actually part of our customer stakeholders. So it's a cooperative way of working that, of course, embraces change. That means you can be adaptive and you keep modifying. Now, this is what used to happen before. And I know this because it came from the technology world, the developer world. Those are the ones that started the Agile way and the Agile manifesto. What used to happen is this, just to give you a background. We used to come up with a plan for how we are going to come up, let's say, with a HRIS with a CRM, an ERP system. Then you put a requirement. IT people call it BRD, business requirement document. They come up with a document saying, we want a module that can onboard an employee and send a notification to the former employer. You know, we come up with a checklist of things. Then when you do that, you set that requirement to a developer who then translate into a technical kind of work plan, and then they start building. When do you meet again? You meet again when they have a solution, a complete system with a checklist of the original checklist that you had. That's what used to happen in the development world, which I'm part of it slightly in terms of the IT world. So they'll come up with a checklist of the business requirement document with all the solutions that are required, and then they will send to the developer. The developer will show up after 6 months with that solution. Now, this is what used to happen. Most of this development will take 1 year. So when the 1 year comes, the original assumptions, maybe 40% of them have actually changed. We are no longer in need of some of the features we needed, but because you had already scoped it, you kind of have to force it within yourself. Now you start another process to do what you call change request. And of course, you know what IT people will do? They will hit you in another invoice because of the change request. Now, that process used to be very, very expensive. And number two, it was not customer-centric. That means the assumptions that maybe you had put in place when you're starting the process, by the time you're finishing, the customer changes have evolved. So what do? You trash that system. And you can look at, for those who have worked longer in many organizations, sometimes by the time you deploy a system, you don't need 50% of that system. You're actually looking at how to change it and how to actually probably get into new system. That is the problem of the former methodology. It was very inflexible, very rigid, and therefore was not customer driven. The same case happened even to HR. Sometimes you do that HR handbook and the manual, but sometimes some of the things that we put there, within 1 year, they are no longer applicable. So what happens? They become irrelevant. Yet we have bulky of documents, bulky of policies, bulky of references that we can make. So this is why now the Agile came. As much as it came from the software development world, it has now evolved within now the normal business areas, the HR side and all that, so that we allow a bit flexibility when it comes to dealing with the human being. So in a traditional way, we call it waterfall. Waterfall is when we come up with a plan. We are using this even in the strategy. You may notice when I started strategy consultancy, we used to do 10 years. That's over 10 years ago. We now moved from 10 years, we started doing 5 years strategy. I can bet to you that like now, I think for the last 3 or 4 years, there's no company I have done 5-year strategy. The maximum I have done is 3 years. And even those 3 years, I struggle because the 3 years is too long enough to really plan for. So what do you do? Now currently we are doing something called 6 months focus sprint. A sprint is a short lane, like you run 100 meters marathon. A 100 focus, strategy focus sprint. That's what we are doing currently in the strategy space. So yes, we can do the 5 years, which we used to do before. We can do the 3 years, that's okay. But currently, if you really want to have that strategy implemented, you have to focus on what's called short sprints of execution. So that's the kind of change even when it comes to strategy. And even for us, I know as HR, we're also doing this kind of strategy implementation as part of our delivery. So in the Agile way, it's more focused on individuals' interactions. On the waterfall is quote policies and tools and processes. So there's no human there. It's like the example I gave about the ATM. ATM is just a tool, it's a technology. So the waterfall focus on the tool and the technology does not focus on the individual or the interaction with the customer. It doesn't mean that we stop using the tools, no, but we still have to embed that human experience within it. I'll kindly request if we can mute ourselves. The co-host can help me mute some of the people that not they are unmuted. Good. So number 2, of course, is the Agile way focused on the working solution. It's more on the working solution. The waterfall was on documentation. You may notice sometimes when service providers give you a service, they want to give you a 100-page document with documentation of how the system works. But when you go and check how that system is meeting your needs, you sometimes discover the solution is not there. But you have a whole document documenting, user guides, like what you call the user guides, documenting how the system works. But when it comes to the solution you are solving, it is not addressed. That's why Agile way becomes more important. It focuses on customer collaboration. What I usually say is that you have now customer in the boardroom. So one way that Agile does is to bring the customer in the design of the solution. So if I want to roll out a new policy like a HR, I have first of all to include that employee into the boardroom, not to go and sit as HR and come up with a concept, and then we force it through the people. No, but can we engage the employee such that they are part of even the design of that solution? On the waterfall, it's about contract negotiation and all that, not about customer negotiation or collaboration. Agile is supposed to change. Waterfall, which is the traditional way, is to follow a plan. You may hear people talking about this. It is because we are doing this because it's as per plan. But probably what you're doing is already irrelevant. But because it was budget oriented, you still fix it into the implementation. That shows you're still in the waterfall way. So it doesn't mean that you don't plan. No. But it means if there are changes that happens in the course of execution, you literally modify your plan to suit that change. So you don't necessarily religiously follow a plan. So what used to happen is that you have an annual plan, January to December. So you kind of religiously just follow through that. There are companies that usually call budget-led organization. And I hope most of us are not there. Government does that a lot. Budget-led organizations are those, they will do something because the budget is, or says so, because the annual plan says so, not because it is needed for such a time. So they follow a plan religiously. Later, you come to realize too much activities, but no impact at the end of the day. So that's kind of a value proposition in terms of what we call the Agile Manifesto. As I said, I'm going to have this more as a beginner conversation. So Agile Manifesto was a manifesto that was agreed by the Agile community. Actually, there's a whole Agile community. For those who may have used this, you may hear people talking about Agile coaches. So you have a whole community of Agile coaches. I know quite a number of them in my network. So that manifesto guides the principles on how the Agile process works and the Agile principles work. So these are just something that I have picked from the Agile Manifesto, but it's a whole guideline by itself, which maybe you can get time and study on your own. Now, if you look at, this is just a small research I got from Gartner talking about the adoption of, the Agile method. So, and 48% had not used Agile within HR. That means almost 50%. And actually, you can generalize only 29% of HR functions have kind of adapted a bit of Agile principles. So 65% still says that really, the 65% of course are in the verge of saying that when they use Agile, they're able to see positive results. I think it's good for us to also do that kind of a test here. Are you really using Agile principles in your working environment? I would love to hear that also even from this team here. We are 22 of us. I think we can also be able to share this. Are we using Agile principles in your work? Maybe you can do that as a poll for me. Just put maybe a yes or maybe a no on the chat as we continue. Are you really using Agile principles in your organization? Just put a yes or a no. We are going to also do a bit of an analysis on that. We could have done a poll, but I think that's also good for us to know how we are implementing the Agile way. So this shows you that we have a long way to go to implement Agile principles. And it's because our organization are not ready. There's a survey we've been doing where we test agility. So we have an agility assessment. And for those who may be willing to do that, we have actually a test where we kind of able to assess agility readiness. And we get something we call Agile Maturity Index. It's something that we've been doing for the last 2 years in partnership with another community that does Agile coaching. So we'll have to have that as part of the organizational forecast in 2023, even to test whether your organization is ready to adopt the Agile way. So as I said, Agile came from the software development. The traditional way was about the boss. and everybody else. You know, it's me versus everybody else. It was about the boss and everybody else who is maybe subordinate to the boss. But now we are moving, of course. So this was more anchored on rules, roles, plans, and reports you give the boss. So if your an organization is more on this, it's about focus on the roles, rules, plans, and reports, then most likely you may be in the waterfall approach in terms of the model of work. So it was a quite very rigid, because for you even to change something, you have to change the role, you have to change the rule, you have to modify the plan, and the boss have to agree. Now you can imagine that kind of ambiguity. It's quite very archaic. You know, that's why you find organizations where things are taking forever, even for them to be implemented or to implement a slight change. But then the Agile bring a bit of interactive, incremental, and collaborative approach. That's why it's very important to master how to do experiments. As I said, we are going to do another webinar about how to do business experiments, because it helps you then be able to iterate. I'll kindly request to mute ourselves. Yeah. So you have to learn how to do in kind of experiments, because Agile way is more anchored on that iterative process that requires an experimental mindset. So you need to experiment things, and you test, you validate, you know, prototype and all that, until, of course, you find something that is working, then you can be able to deploy. This helps you in terms of incremental change and incremental turnaround of whatever you want to achieve. But of course, we have challenges, the traditional waterfall method, which I think I've already highlighted. I won't indulge on this more. It is more rigid in terms of process and steps. It has been longer term process, and therefore it takes too much time to realize benefits. It's more, you know, not customer-led, again, rigid hierarchy, because there are bosses that have to approve things and sign off for everything that we do. It's quite very archaic. The Agile method is more on, of course, you know, gather, you know, detailed requirements. Yes, that's okay. It is still enforced that. But then you prioritize capabilities. You front load functionality for user reaction, meaning, of course, that then you build some sprints that are able to execute short milestone that you can celebrate immediately. So you don't have to wait for a whole system to work. As I say, like, and I give an example of developing, let's say, an ERP. You don't wait until you get a complete ERP working. Can I, first of all, be able to sign in? Now, in Agile, you hear people talking about minimum viable product. Now, when you hear Agile people talking about MVP, now you should not be floating. That's what they mean. It's that minimum viable product or solution, me, I like using the word solution, of a certain solution that you can easily celebrate as a milestone. So if it's a system I'm developing, let's say a HRIS, can I, first of all, just be able to log in? Ability to log in is a minimum viable solution into that system. I may not do appraisal because it's not here, that's a different module, but I'm able to do one thing and I can do it well. And I can scale that. So that's what you call those sprints. The sprint helps you kind of get small achievable milestone that actually you can celebrate, you can test, and then kind of celebrate, and then you can reprioritize again and be able to move on into the next milestone. So those are the differences between Agile and Waterfall. I won't indulge on this for now. I think they're already executed in the previous few propositions I have raised so far. I hope I'm still having audience engaged. So would you give me a thumb up as we continue, just to see that we are progressing well? Kindly. Thank you. Can see one thumb up somewhere. I want to see a thumb up just to make sure I can see 2 thumb ups. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Just to make sure at least we are not floating. Now, let's talk about HR. This one of the things that, of course, we need to do as a HR is to be able to build environment that is responsive. HR solutions that are responsive to the concerns of the employees that we are dealing with. Currently, I like also referring to employees as impact partners also, because they actually help us drive the bigger impact of our organization. So we should have an agile approach as HR to have things that are released quickly. more faster to meet the needs. I know you must have related with this during the COVID, because in the COVID, we needed to act so urgently, unprecedented, and we didn't have a script to read from. So it's either you do it, whether you are gambling, you later come to discover whether you have done the right thing or not the right thing. But actually, that's the dynamic of agility. It helps you, as much as the situation may be ambiguous or kind of not very, you're not able to see the end in mind, but can you just do one small thing, but you can celebrate, but you do it quickly and faster, but it's responding to a specific need of the people that we are serving. I think that's the issue of HR responsibility. Of course, we need to adapt the HR principles in terms of realizing that, and you're going to see some of the examples I'm going to give along the way as we continue. So some of the business outcomes or some of the benefits that you get from the Agile way is, first of all, you get more satisfaction. That issue of having people unengaged or disengaged or unhappy should not actually happen when you're in Agile way, because you're able to customize solutions to suit that customer. The delivery of the projects and the products and the solutions that we offer are usually more speedy. You're able to execute more faster. And then, of course, overall, you get to see long-term growth. This is now focusing on it, not from a HR, but from an overall organizational level. So it makes you deliver things more faster, but also you can be able to realize more growth in the long term, because there's relevance at the end of the day. Now, as I said, Agile has a mindset. I said in the beginning, this is why I love Agile. The last part, the mindset issue. But let me first of all talk about when you're dealing with, let's say, HR projects and all that, some of the components that you deal with in Agile are things to do with like shorter work cycles. Now, I want to challenge us, and especially for us in HR who are in the mainstream HR itself, instead of looking for weekly deliverable, monthly appraisals. Now, if you apply Agile principles, I know most of us struggle with what you call productivity tracking. Now, in the Agile principles, you hear people talk about those startup sessions. Startup sessions are sessions actually can last even 5 minutes to 20 minutes, and they are mostly done daily. Sometimes we have 2 startups. You hear people saying we have a startup at 11, we have another startup at 3. Now, what does that happen? You may delegate a task to an employee. They navigate their own way, they are not performing. Then you wait until Friday to check how far they are. Only an employee to come and tell you, you know, I tried to research this, I didn't get this, and the tool misbehaved, the system was not working, so I have not done. Do you know what? That's a whole 1 week wasted. And then we struggle in productivity because end of the month, wasted. End of the Q1 performance appraisals, wasted. That's where performance become a big issue. Now we need to kind of embed some real-timeness, if there is such a word, in how we manage our work cycles, such that there are more frequent engagement, and that's how you're able to coach employee and clear barriers where you find maybe there's something that is hindering or a barrier to execution, especially the employees that are in the operations. The shorter work cycles, if you do a 2-day startups, and the startup is just where somebody just give an articulation of what they wanted to do, where they are and the challenge they are facing, what they are doing next, and it is not more than 5 minutes or 3 minutes actually on average. So if you're able to do that, you're able to unlock barriers, especially for management. We need to make sure our managers understand how to kind of do things, because they're able then to clear barriers of implementation or barriers of execution real time, not wait until the end of the week or sometimes end of the month is when you're evaluating was something done. It is already too late even to kind of modify. Iterations mean, of course, where you go repetitive processes so that you test again and kind of reiterate again and kind of have a repetitive process to test and validate a solution. Feedback from customers at real time, especially for projects. I talked about MVP. I think I won't repeat that again. It's a minimum viable solution that you can give that actually you can celebrate, a milestone that you can celebrate as a short cycle. It's like breaking down a big chunk of a solution into small bite size. If you apply this in learning, for example, if I'm training you on performance management, instead of training you on the entire performance management from goal setting to appraisal, I only make sure, can you first of all set goals? But then that becomes the minimum viable learning solution or kind of learning outcome. But then after that, then you can get into the next one. So instead of this whole day training, a whole 3-day training, information overload, and people do not implement anything, You can do short sprints of learning or learning sprints, whether it's just for 3 hours or 4 hours, but targeted to just a small thing, just to fix a one thing in the midst of the bigger thing that you want to achieve. That's part of the MVP that you can apply in learning solution. I won't talk about the design more, but just creating fluidity in terms of a bit more open structures that are more not rigid. There are no hierarchy. They are more cross-functional. There are no silos where finance feel they are finance and therefore they don't care about operations. HR, they don't care about sales. You know, a bit more cross-functional functions where people kind of create synergy within themselves. That's why the traditional department soon is going to be scrapped off, because the traditional department was process-based. You know why? Why do you have a finance department? It's because of financial processes. Why do you have a HR department? Because of HR processes. So we have formed departments and organizational structure based on process. Procurement guys, because they are doing, procurement, raising purchase orders all the way to onboarding and whatever, the buyer, procurement buyer. That's why we have built that. But now what happens is they operate in silo that nobody else actually know what they do there other than themselves. That does not happen in an Agile. So in an Agile, of course, yes, people have specialties on their own area, but you build a cross-functional team that is beyond just one specialization. It helps even knowledge transfer, bit of competencies and some knowledge that are more in only one function. But I think what I love for me is the last one, mindset, because I'm more of a mindset transformer. The customer centricity, have the person in mind before developing a solution, embracing the change. Now, the one I like most is failing fast and learning quickly. There are people who are always planning, and you end up doing something I call planning to plan. I talk about this mostly when it comes to strategy execution. When you go to some of these strategy workshops, people are planning to plan. They are not really executing, they are planning to plan. So you find we are so much filled with a plan to plan again, a plan to plan. Now, in the Agile mindset is fail fast, learn quickly. The faster you fail, the more faster you learn, and then the more faster you're able to modify and get to have a better way of approach in terms of implementation. Then collaborative attitude. It's not about silo, me thin and you thin. It's about all of us together collaborating for one value. But then, of course, openness, I call this vulnerability. Vulnerability for feedback, where a customer or an employee will tell you, this benefit is not working for us, this learning is not working for us, and you have that openness to receive that feedback and then use it to be able to weave and to design a better user experience. I'm tempted to park my conversation there. I know I have a few other slides remaining, but I'm seeing like we have 9 minutes remaining. I think it's good just to have some quick interactions. There's no monopoly of knowledge. Some of us I know are already using Agile method, and I'd love to hear from your experience, the challenges you are facing in implementing this Agile methodology for those who are already doing it. And for those who are not, then probably how you're preparing your organization into the Agile space. So I have a few other slides which I think we can do in the subsequent webinars, where we talk about how to apply Agile in learning and growth, how to apply Agile in performance management, Agile in recruitment process. You can apply Agile in the entire life cycle of an employee. I think we can have that as a separate webinar from today. But I hope at least this one has given you a bit of an idea in terms of the Agile principles, and just to have a mindset tune-up in terms of what is expected in this process. So I think we'll park there and take back the meeting to Jerry, our host. Thank you for listening to me. We will have another build-up of series of this in the subsequent engagements. So kindly look out to tune up. And if you're joining us for the first time in terms of never attended our purpose-led HR webinars, kindly will encourage you to sign up into our group. We are going to post a link to the group, to the chat here, where you can be able to join our WhatsApp group, Purpose-led HR network, so that you can also be receiving real-time feedback when we get into these more additional learning excursions. So thank you so much, Jerry. If there is any question on the chat, I'll be willing to engage and also get more feedback as we wrap up the session.
Absolutely, Gabriel. That has been very enriching in terms of the information that you've shared with us. And surprisingly, out of all the participants we have here, we have 3 that say they are using the Agile way in the workplace. I got 4 responses and 3 of them are actually using the Agile way. So perhaps I could open to a minute and just ask one of the participants. I have Terry or Eric, maybe just to share with us what have been the successes and what was the challenge in implementing? If you could just share in about a minute, and then we can bring this to a wrap. We want to honor our 8 o'clock hard stop. Terry, if you could open your mic and just share with us.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Gabriel, for the discussion. I'm looking forward to part 2. I think for us, when we did our 3-year strategic plan, we realized the world of development is changing pretty fast, and doing like a 5-year strategic plan really doesn't work. And just actually right in the middle of our 3-year strategic plan, we realized there's a lot that was changing in our space, that we had to do a lot of workshopping and relook at our strategy. And that's when we turned into doing OKRs and just working with OKRs on a quarterly basis. Like every quarter, we look at what's the priority this quarter, which direction are we heading as an organization, and what do we need to be focusing on. So then we've also done lots of trainings on human-centered design. We are always collecting feedback from our beneficiaries, or we call them our entrepreneurs in the communities where we work, so that on a monthly basis, we are changing our programming and not just sticking to the book, that this is how we do it. And that has really helped. It has, helped us achieve much more than we could ever imagine because of that, iterating every now and then as we look at what we are doing, what's going well, what's not working, what we need to stop doing, and what we need to keep changing.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Perhaps we can hear from just a question. I give this next 2 minutes to somebody at the floor to open up before we bring our meeting to a close. And Gabriel, as the questions come up, perhaps there are none. I am really impressed that departments will no longer be in existence in the Agile way. That for me was quite the woo. So I wonder how organizational structures will then look like. In the next webinars, this would be a nice thing to explore, so that as we adopt the Agile way, we can look at how then we can restructure and advise our businesses as HR on how to look forward and adapt to the Agile.
Absolutely, Jerry. That is very true. I think we'll be experiencing more very unprecedented paradigm shift in terms of how we operate business. And I think, yes, and thank you, Terry, for sharing that. That is exactly, I think, what I had tried to allude earlier. We are moving away from those traditional 5-year, 3-year strategic plan to more focused sprints that actually can be able to deliver short-term values and milestones that we're able to celebrate and then learn. It actually helps you learn more faster because you fail fast. It's like those people who want to do, let's say you want to start a business. I will give an example of somebody who I know who was working in one of the big 5 and wanted to go to consultancy on himself. He saved around 3 million, set up an office somewhere in Upper Hill, and had a whole office, over 3 million spent just pimping the office. Now, what happens is he kind of overestimated and kind of over-ambitiously planned that move. And within 1 year, he actually was closing down that consultancy firm. Now, if you kind of could have started small, just like a small 10 feet space as a business, then learn from there, fail faster, then modify, iterate, improve, learn, adapt, change, those keywords, that person could have sustained that business. So even in business approach, sometimes we just want to have these we default kind of a mechanism. You have this capital and you just want to come and big bang approach. That does not work correctly. So in terms of structure, yes, we are going to see quite a lot of changes in the structure just to make sure at least we have fluidity. Fluidity means there is no those hierarchies. The boss have to sign off. Sometimes the people that are actually on the ground here, they need to be empowered. Agile push the culture of empowerment, meaning you're empowering to the lower base, but then hold accountability, hold them accountable. It's as simple as that. So you can push accountability down, empowerment, but then hold them accountable. Let them make a decision, empower them, but then hold them accountable to the results. It makes work so easy for you. Even as a boss, you don't have much time to kind of remote manage, and also because of the cross-functional nature, you're able to learn. I remember one time we were assessing in the banking, how many people understand banking products. You find people working in a bank, let's say you are in HR, but you don't understand the products because you are in a silo. You only understand HR processes. If you're in sales processes. If you're in procurement actually, you sample them, ask them whether they understand your business. They'll tell you they don't understand. Now, how do you support a business you don't understand? That's why the traditional process-based organizational design, in terms of the structure, is actually irrelevant, doesn't work, and doesn't serve the current trends within the market. So yeah, Jerry, I think I want to support you. We're going to see quite a very interesting shift in how we design our business in future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gabriel. It has been indeed a pleasure to host each and every one of you here. By the time on my clock, it is coming to 8 o'clock. We are at 7:59. We honor time. And in the Agile workspace, we are responsive even to every second because it counts. I just want to speak a blessing to each and every one of you that has attended this session. We shall be on air again next week, Tuesday. For those that have already joined in late, this webinar will be posted on YouTube. If you follow Gabriel Nyamo, if you follow Papa's Verse, you shall be able to trace it on the social media spaces. Thank you so much for sparing your time. I wish you a pleasant evening. Let's purpose to put our children to bed as part of being agile workers in the workspace. The Lord bless you and have a pleasant evening, all of you. Good night.
Thank you so much for attending, and God bless you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye. Good night.
Good night.
See you next Tuesday. Sorry, next Thursday. It is same time, 7 to 8.
Absolutely.